The chalk scraped against concrete in slow, careful loops as my daughter drew her city. Tiny roads connecting stick-figure families, stop signs at intersections that would never see traffic. I was watching through the kitchen window when the sound changed. Not Eliza's chalk anymore, but rubber tires grinding pastel dust into gray smears across the patio stones. My father stood at the edge of my backyard like a man surveying property he already owned. A realtor beside him, measuring tape dangling from her wrist, clipboard catching the afternoon light. My sister Teresa hovered near the sliding glass doors, while her twin boys circled on balance bikes, their wheels obliterating the word Mom Eliza had drawn beside a tall stick figure and a small one. "Stop being selfish," my father said, his voice flat and final. "Your sister's twins need a bigger yard." The realtor nodded, pen already moving across her clipboard like his sentence belonged on an official form. "We're listing it next week," he continued. "You'll stay in the garage apartment." My brother-in-law, Kevin, laughed, not awkwardly, not nervously, but like a man hearing good news. "Finally," he said, scanning the yard like he was mentally rearranging it. "A real house for real family." Behind me, something small and paper crinkled. I turned to see Eliza on the back step, clutching a snowflake she'd spent an hour cutting out for the kitchen window. Her fingers were still dotted with dried glue. She didn't cry. That broke me more than tears would have. Instead, she folded the snowflake slowly in half and pressed it against her chest like she was trying to make herself smaller, like she was the thing taking up too much room. "My name is Rosalind. I'm 38 and I'm an engineer. This is the story of how I learned that the strongest foundations aren't built from concrete. They're built from knowing exactly where you belong." The injustice wasn't just in his words. It was in how he didn't knock, didn't call first, didn't ask how my daughter's teacher conference went or whether I'd finally slept through the night. It was in how he looked past Eliza like she was furniture he'd already decided not to keep. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them to get out of my yard, out of my life, out of my child's sense of safety. But my family had trained me early to be the calm one, the fixer, the daughter who didn't make scenes. So I did what had always kept me safe. I smiled, not warmly, just enough to keep the moment from exploding. "Got it," I said. My father looked satisfied, like he'd just closed a deal. The realtor glanced up. "So, Thursday for photos?" "Thursday works," Dad answered without looking at me. Eliza's eyes found mine, quick and careful, like a bird checking the sky for danger. I squeezed her shoulder gently. "Go get your shoes, sweetie." She went inside without a sound, the folded snowflake still pressed against her heart. What my father didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this house wasn't theirs to give away, and the woman whose name was on the deed had just sent me a message from beyond their reach. "I need to tell you how we got here, because the backyard wasn't where this started. It was just where everything finally broke open." 2 years earlier, my husband died in a car accident on a rainy highway. No dramatic goodbye, no warning, just gone. Around the same time, Grandma Ruth had her fall and moved into assisted living. After my husband's death, Eliza and I became all each other had. She was 8, adopted when she was 3, something my parents liked to forget. They never said it outright, but they treated her like she was temporary. Family photos where she was asked to take the picture. Birthday parties where she got a generic card while the twins tore through layers of wrapping paper. My mother called her that sweet little girl, not her name, never her name. My father liked to say things like, "She's lucky you took her in," like Eliza had been a stray. And through all of it, I kept showing up, because I was also the family wallet. That started long before Eliza. When I got my first real promotion, Dad needed help with property taxes. When Teresa got married, my parents needed help covering the venue deposit. When Teresa decided she wanted kids, suddenly there were fertility appointments they couldn't finance. I didn't call it exploitation. I called it responsibility. A few hundred here, a few thousand there. A temporary loan that never came back. A credit card I paid off because it was hurting Dad's score. A contractor deposit I covered for now. One night that summer, I finally did the math. I'd funneled more than $20,000 into my parents' and sisters' lives in less than a year. And through all of it, my daughter was treated like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. But there was something else that made the backyard scene uglier. This house wasn't just any house. It was my grandmother's, Ruth's. She was the only one who ever looked at Eliza like she fully belonged. She learned her favorite cereal, kept extra markers just for her, taped Eliza's drawings to the fridge like they mattered. When she moved into assisted living, Dad had swooped in with paperwork and authority, power of attorney, all under the banner of helping. He convinced her to let me and Eliza live here temporarily because he didn't want strangers renting it. I paid the bills, I fixed the roof leak, I replaced the water heater, I kept the garden alive because Grandma loved it. Dad still called it the family house, which really meant their house. That afternoon, Teresa's twins rode straight through Eliza's chalk drawings. One glanced back and said, "Oops," like it was funny. Kevin shrugged. "We'll redo all this anyway." Eliza's drawing was a tiny city, roads, stop signs, stick figures holding hands. She'd drawn one tall figure and one small one and labeled them me and Mom. The bike tire smeared the word Mom into a gray streak. Eliza didn't say a word. She just picked up her snowflake and set it on the kitchen counter like she didn't know where to put herself. I should have known then that if I didn't stop this, I'd spend the rest of my life watching my child learn that love was conditional and space was something you had to earn. That night after they left, I did exactly what I said I would. I started packing. I pulled boxes out of the garage apartment, the one Dad was so eager to assign me like a punishment. I filled one with Eliza's books, one with kitchen items, one with her framed school photo. Eliza sat on the rug with her stuffed rabbit, watching me tape boxes shut. Finally, very softly, she asked, "Did I do something wrong?" That sentence felt like someone pressing a thumb into a bruise. "No," I told her, "you didn't." "Are we getting kicked out?" I didn't lie. "We're not staying where we're not wanted." She nodded like she understood more than an 8-year-old should. Then she went to her room and started packing a backpack. She already knew how to leave. Around 10:40 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number, one text. "Don't leave, check the basement. Grandma." Later, I'd learned that one of the nurses had helped Grandma send it. She'd insisted, and when Ruth insisted, people listened. My heart started pounding too loud for the quiet house. Grandma didn't text. She hated phones, said buttons were too small, and messages felt like whispering through walls. If she needed me, she called. This felt urgent. This felt hidden. For 30 seconds, I just stared at my phone, the screen going dark, then lighting up again like it was breathing with me. I set it face down on the counter and listened. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every sound inside your head feel louder. Down the hall, I could hear Eliza's dresser drawer opening and closing softly. She was packing without being told what to take. That realization made my stomach twist. I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer and headed for the basement door. It stuck like it always did, the old wood creaking as I pulled it open. Each step complained under my weight as I descended. The basement smelled like concrete and dust and old paint, a place meant to store things, not secrets. The freezer hummed in the corner. It wasn't even in use. Dad insisted it stay plugged in, said it was good to have options. I'd always thought that was strange, but not strange enough to question. Now my gaze locked on it like it was alive. I moved toward the back wall and froze. The paint behind the freezer was a slightly different shade. Not obvious, not unless you were looking for it. My heart started racing. I crouched, ran my hand along the baseboard, and felt it. An uneven seam, a panel. My fingers slipped into the gap and pulled. It came away easily, too easily. Behind it was a narrow cavity between the studs. My breath caught as I reached inside and touched cold metal, a lockbox and a thick envelope wrapped in plastic. The envelope had my name written across the front in careful cursive. Rosalind. Not to the family, not for my son. Just me. I carried everything upstairs like it might break and set it on the kitchen table. I needed a moment to breathe, to remind myself this was real. Then I broke the seal. The letter was on top. Grandma Ruth didn't waste words. "Rosalind, if you're reading this, your father has tried to take the house from you. I'm sorry, I told him no. He didn't listen." My chest tightened. "This home is not a prize for whoever yells the loudest. It's yours. You kept it alive. You kept me alive. You kept that little girl alive when no one else bothered to learn her heart." Tears blurred the page. But I kept reading. I changed the trust. I recorded it. Your father is no longer the trustee. You are. He will try to rush you. He will try to scare you. Don't let him. Call the attorney inside. And Rosalind, and check the lockbox. You deserve to know what he's been doing with my money. Love, Grandma Ruth. I read it twice, then a third time. My hands shook as I opened the folder beneath the letter. Documents slid out. Legal, official, stamped. A trust amendment naming me as trustee. A recorded deed transfer already filed, already official. My father had stood in my backyard with a realtor while having no legal right to sell the house. But the lockbox was worse. I opened it with the small key taped inside the envelope. Inside were bank statements and handwritten notes. Withdrawals that didn't match Grandma's care costs. Checks made out to cash. Transfers to my father. Transfers to Teresa. Beside one entry Grandma had written in the margin. Asked him what this was for. He lied. My mouth went dry. This wasn't just greed. This was unauthorized withdrawals. This was taking advantage of an elderly woman while she sat in assisted living, trusting her son to protect her. Suddenly everything clicked. The urgency, the backyard ambush, the way Dad had already planned my displacement. They weren't just entitled, they were desperate. They needed the house sale to cover what they'd taken. I went down the hall and checked on Eliza. She was asleep on top of her blanket, her backpack still open beside her bed, like she'd fallen asleep mid-escape. Her stuffed rabbit was tucked under her chin. Something settled in my chest. Not rage, clarity. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to draw one clean boundary that didn't need permission. The next morning at 8:12 a.m., I made coffee and called the attorney Grandma listed. He answered on the second ring. Your grandmother told me this call might come, he said. After I confirmed my name, I told him about the realtor. His voice went flat. He has no authority, you do. We'll send notice today. Then I called the bank. I stopped automatic transfers, removed linked accounts, changed passwords. One by one, confirmation emails rolled in. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt lighter. The bank flagged the withdrawals for review. 3 weeks later, the bank confirmed what we already knew. Unauthorized withdrawals totaling over $40,000. They filed a report with Adult Protective Services, but Dad was never prosecuted. The evidence was clear, but Grandma refused to press charges, saying she just wanted it to stop. Eliza padded into the kitchen and froze when she saw the boxes. I knelt in front of her. We're not moving today. Her eyes widened. So my room is still my room. Yes. She smiled carefully, like the smile might disappear if she made it too big. The fallout started fast. Calls, voicemails, a text from Dad. Why aren't the transfers going through? I replied once. I'm not funding a family that treats my child like she doesn't matter. Later that same day at 2:15 p.m., they showed up. No warning. Dad marched up the steps, Teresa and Kevin following. You came to your senses, Dad said, seeing the boxes. You can't list this house, I said calmly. Watch me. I held up the folder. Grandma changed the trust. I'm the trustee. The house isn't for sale. Their faces shifted through disbelief, confusion, then something uglier. Dad's jaw tightened. She wouldn't do that. She did. Teresa's voice cracked. This is insane. She's confused. She's sharp as ever, I interrupted, and she knows exactly what you've been doing with her money. Kevin stepped forward. Real family needs space. You can't just... That's when Eliza appeared behind me, barefoot, rabbit in hand. Kevin smiled at her, a patronizing curve of his mouth. Looks like you'll have a cool little apartment soon. My father still didn't look at her. Not once. I stepped back and closed the door. I locked it. Outside, voices rose, angry, pleading, threatening. Inside, Eliza tugged my shirt. Are they mad? Yes. Are we okay? I looked at her and told the truth. We are okay. I stayed with my back against the door long after their voices faded, not because I was scared they'd break in, but because I needed to feel the weight of that decision settle into my bones. For the first time in my life, I hadn't explained myself. I hadn't softened the blow. I hadn't negotiated my own boundaries into something easier for them to swallow. I'd simply said no. The rest of that afternoon passed in a strange quiet, not peaceful exactly, more like the silence after a storm when everything feels fragile but intact. I moved the boxes into the spare room instead of the garage apartment. Eliza helped, carefully stacking her books back onto the shelf as if she were reclaiming territory. My phone kept lighting up. I didn't answer. That night, after Eliza fell asleep, I listened to the voicemails. My mother cried in the first one, said she didn't understand how things had gone so far, said families shouldn't treat each other like strangers. My sister left 2 messages, one angry, one trembling, both carefully avoiding my daughter's name. Dad left the last voicemail. "You've humiliated me. You think you're protecting that child, but you're tearing this family apart. You'll regret this." I saved it. Not for revenge, for documentation. The next few days were a blur of emails and paperwork. The attorney confirmed the trust amendment and sent formal notice revoking Dad's authority. Grandma's assisted living facility updated their records, listing me as the sole decision-maker. Meanwhile, Dad showed up there 2 days later trying to charm the staff. He didn't expect Grandma to be sitting in the common room when he walked in. I wasn't there, but the nurse who'd helped with the text told me about it later. Grandma looked right at him, loud enough for everyone to hear, and said, "I know what you did." He didn't argue. He left. Teresa came after that, crying, trying to hug Grandma. Grandma didn't move. "You wanted the house," she told her. "You didn't want the people in it." Kevin never showed. When the money stopped, everything collapsed faster than I expected. Teresa called a week later saying they might lose their rental. She didn't apologize to Eliza. She just said, "You have to help." "I don't," I said. She accused me of letting her kids suffer. "I'm not your backup bank," I replied and hung up. They moved in with my parents 2 months later. I heard through a mutual acquaintance. The rental they'd wanted my house to fund apparently wasn't as essential as they'd claimed. Dad tried showing up at my job. He'd always known where I worked. He used to brag about his engineer daughter to his friends. Security walked him out. That was the last time I saw him in person. He never apologized, never acknowledged what he'd done. He simply stopped existing in my life, which was exactly what I needed. Something shifted in Eliza over the next few weeks, subtle at first. She stopped flinching when my phone buzzed. She taped her drawings back on the fridge without asking. One afternoon, she asked if she could repaint the birdhouse in the backyard. We painted it together, purple roof, yellow sides, a crooked heart on the front. "This one stays," she said, pressing dirt around the base of a newly planted maple tree that spring. "Yes," I told her, "it stays." 7 months later, by Christmas, there were no invitations, no apologies, just silence. And the silence was a gift. We decorated our own tree. Grandma came over, steady on her walker, smiling more than I'd seen in years. On Christmas morning, Eliza opened a sketchbook and markers like they were treasure. She drew our house, our yard, the maple tree. 3 stick figures holding hands. Me, Mom, Grandma, Ruth. She taped it to the fridge herself. No asking, no fear. That was the closure. Not winning, not revenge. Just my child standing in her own home, knowing she didn't have to earn her place or pack a bag in the middle of the night ever again. The hardest part wasn't cutting them off. It was accepting that I'd spent years trying to earn something they were never going to give. Respect, consideration, the simple acknowledgement that my daughter and I mattered. I'd been funding their lives while they planned my displacement. I'd been apologizing for taking up space in a house that was legally mine. But here's what I learned. Boundaries aren't cruel. They're clarity. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and your child is to stop showing up to places where you're treated like you don't belong. If you're reading this and you recognize that feeling, that constant negotiation of your own worth, that exhausting performance of gratitude for scraps of basic decency, I want you to know something. You're not selfish for protecting your peace. You're not heartless for refusing to fund people who treat you like an ATM with a pulse. And if you have a child watching you navigate this, they're learning something crucial. They're learning that love doesn't look like accepting cruelty to keep the peace. They're learning that home isn't where you're tolerated. It's where you're chosen. That chalk drawing Eliza made is still faint on the patio stones, protected by the overhang. Sometimes I catch her standing there, just looking at it. Last week, she added something new, a small purple birdhouse carefully outlined in blue chalk. "That's ours," she said, not asking, just stating. "Yes," I told her, "that's ours." Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.